So hi everyone, I'm back with another conscious conversation today, and a lot of people can experience moments of invitation to answer a call, and these calls can come in the form of a gentle whisper or a loud roar, dong you over the head, and during the restrictions of this pandemic, I've witnessed people in a variety of arenas stepping up and answering the call to make a positive contribution to others, to support those people around them, to help ease them through the huge amount of changes that we're all enduring. So today, I've invited Debra Robertson to join me to have a conversation about following the call and what that might mean for many of us. So welcome, Deb, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Cheryl. This is a great honour. Thank you.
You're a self-described seeker of freedom and truth and love, authentic communication and transformation, whether that's through the arts, which is how I actually met you. I was working arts like 25 years ago. I can't believe it. I think it was around that time.
Wow.
Yeah. Where does the time go?
So much has happened.
And finding all of those things also through the honourable engagement with animals and nature and inner and outer beauty and good health. So you've basically got you got the bases covered, haven't you?
Well, I'm 61, and so I've lived already some big decades. So I've put a lot into that as well. There's no two ways. I mean, I never have done things by halves, and I've crammed quite a lot in. So, yeah, it's been a very interesting journey so far. I really want to do more as well.
Yeah. And we've known each through those 25 odd years that we've known each other. We haven't sort of stayed in touch, but we've been on the periphery of each other's orb for quite a while. And I find that, and I'm going to ask you if this happened to you, I'm finding at the moment during this whole process with the pandemic and the shifts that are going on in certain individuals, that the people I've known from years ago, that I knew that I wasn't done with them yet, but we sort of parted ways. They're sort of coming back into circulation now. Are you having that experience?
Well, you're one of them for me. You know, it's a real calling that's been with me consciously since about 14. I knew I was going to be part of some transition. I think I've had this conversation with you a long time ago, and I've always thought, oh, this is it. But no, this is it now. That moment of where everything went belly up. And I mean, people go through this without a pandemic. They can go through shock and everything. I lost my father last year. I got vertigo for the first time, but it was something that just really unseated me. But combined with this collective global thing that's happening, it's really asked me to come out and really stop messing around with not feeling good enough, not feeling, that I have a voice. Gosh, that takes me back to another time where my voice was definitely suppressed. I suppressed it because I was in fear. I think I'm going a bit off track here, Cheryl, so please keep me on. There's a question you asked. Can you repeat the question?
I actually don't know if I had a question, Deb. But I was going to go on to say that I was looking at your bio and you're a very eco-oriented person. And I'm looking at my notes here, and you said that you create marketing and communication campaigns for an eco-label and green product certification company. And I know that at one stage we did have a Skype many years ago when you were living in Sweden for 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think you were there, where you were involved with someone where you were both offering wilderness experiences in Scandinavia. Was that a call for you? Was that part of that?
Oh, man, that was a call. That was a love call, first of all, with an amazing man who I'm still with, even though we haven't seen each other for a few years. There's a lot of love there, a lot of respect, and we hope to rejoin. That call was incredible. I ended up in Sweden, yes, and I ended up going with, first of all, that, oh, this guy is into wilderness. We hadn't even talked at that point. I was looking for nature, and I didn't know why. I was looking at the wilderness. I didn't know why, and it just happened. He came into my orbit, and it went from there. And I saw that this is somewhere where I felt I could be. And when I finally did take the leap across the oceans, it was the right choice. It was definitely the right choice. He is a wilderness man and also a horseman, an animal person, and I am too. That was the other commonality. But we saw that there was a need to prepare people to the softness that was happening in society, you know, the breakdown of people's resilience and health and just who they are and not in touch with who they are. And we both agreed that nature, and of course with animals, is a great way to just touch base and really learn through the experience. Now, coming out of doing the arts and also creating programs for a company that I was a director of for a few years, where we did experiential learning through drama techniques and so forth. We decided to actually create a program of learning in the wilderness. And it wasn't just about tying knots. It was about the experience of staying the time in the wilderness. And hence it was called Get Lost in the Wild. You get lost to find yourself.
I think I agree with you that we have gotten a bit soft, haven't we? We're not as stoic as our forefathers were at all. You know, we're not. And I remember at one stage I had a medical problem. I had to go to the hospital emergency in the middle of the night. And when I was there, there were all sorts of people laying on trolleys and in the aisles. And one had drunk so much he nearly drunk himself to death. And someone else was doing something else. And I said, oh my gosh, just to the nurse who was attending to me, it doesn't sound too great here tonight. She said, oh, people are just they're not tough anymore. They can't seem to stand on their own 2 feet without some sort of support, whether it's alcohol or drugs or whatever. You know, they just don't seem to, the resilience factor's been lost, like you're saying.
Yeah. And I just think our forefathers and foremothers, we should look back to how they lived and what they did. Simplicity and humility, and you know, and looking after each other was another thing. Community. We lost that, but to work with nature, not against it. Not to say all, you know, so-called European farming methods have been the best thing that has ever happened to the land. That's not the case. But there are people who have lived like in permaculture principles, whether it's in the northern or the southern hemisphere, and they know how to sort of work with the land. So like the Aborigines, it's seasonal. You know, you don't sort of go outside of your locale and import things because, you know, you can. You live with the cycles. and you honor them, and they give you fruit, but you have to plant the seeds, and you have to look after yourself as well as the place you live and eat from. So yeah, I'm very attracted to that. And living in this, on the edge of the wilderness, in this village in Sweden, for me, after living in cities most of my life, was so needed for my soul. And it was needed for my soul to expand, for me to get in touch more with my soul and who Debra is, and to be really challenged. And of course I was challenged. I mean, my partner would, 10 o'clock at night, would have a coffee, what they call a fika in Sweden. And he'd go, okay, I'm going out for a walk. Would you like to come? I go, when I said yes, I had no idea what I was heading into. We would go out in pitch dark, drive about half an hour up logging roads, and then set off. No trails or anything. We were walking through swamps, the whole lot, in the dark, starlight, and just trust. I mean, I could always trust him, but at times I would just break down in tears because it's like, where are you? I couldn't see you up ahead. I was just absolute crybaby. But it was a way of actually learning how to trust myself. And I look around me how people can be very, very precious with nature, spiders, even having an animal with them, on a leash. I can't deal with that. It's just, for me, it's like, no, the dog, let's just take the leash off. Let's just go with it, No, you can't do it, a dog has to be trained, I get that. But when you're in the wild, it's like, let it go. Freedom is something that is really, really precious to me as well. And that level of freedom for me was incredible. I used to go away with the dogs on my own. I used to go in, I didn't do overnighters on my own, but I used to just disappear into the forest with the dogs for hours and hours, and extraordinary experiences. One day we watched a whole river break up with the ice. It was like thunder. It was extraordinary. The dogs got all terribly excited, and we were near this sort of creek waterfall area, which was all frozen, and it was coming into spring, and just the extraordinary energy that was building. I was going, what is going on? Dogs are doing strange things to each other, just like very sexual stuff. I'm going, what's going on? And suddenly it just exploded. And then the icebergs were just coming down. I was just, that for me is, I was in the right place, and I was told by people in the village, that's so rare to experience in the wild. You were so honoured. Oh, and I know.
An authentic experience, isn't it? For us who, now that I was, as a young child, I lived on a cattle station, and it's a very different sort of experience, obviously, living in a city. It has its advantages, but it has a lot of disadvantages too. Yeah. But you've done a lot, as we said before, and from my perspective, you seem to fit the criteria of what's known as a cultural creative. And I was saying to you before that I think I sort of fit that too. And a lot of people we probably hang out with fit that description as well. And for those of you who don't know, cultural creatives are a group of people who've emerged since the 60s, and they've sort of built on the tail ends of various movements that went through that time. They're quite invisible to society, so you can't market them to them, you can't Google them, you can't, they're really hard to find, but they're activists and they're volunteers, and they'll become committee members, contributors to good causes, and they're more often than not than any other demographic in society do those sorts of things, and they care deeply about ecology and saving the planet. And I've looked at the various studies of that demographic, and that is their number one thing, the ecology of the planet. It's very important to them. Also they care about relationships and about peace and about social justice and self-actualization, spirituality and self-expression. So I feel drawn just saying that I feel drawn to that sort of group, to all those things that are valuable. So I think one could say that cultural creatives have, in essence, created a silent movement by following a calling. And by following something that has prompted them. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about following a call, or following the calling, which is what we're talking about today. What exactly is that, and how does it work?
Gosh.
A simple question for you.
That is, it's one thing I have been denying myself in the last few years. I've been through a period of, after I met you, Sheryl, after the experiments I did at university, exploring audience interactive theatre, and that's where the audience becomes the centre of performance. It was a calling that I had made about 10 years before and dove into the arts. That was a real calling, and I was free and I was just experimenting wildly. That was a calling that I met. It was coming back from London in my mid-20s, and I just came out of my mouth one day, I want to do theatre. This is after being a journalist. And I went into it. I went into it like Hercules. The doors opened, and I knew I had to be part of an expression. I needed to express myself. So for me, going forward about 15 years into actually becoming an academic at one point where I met you, and starting to explore a certain kind of theatre model that was beyond just audience participation. It was actually bringing the voices of the audience into existence, was honouring myself in bringing what I wanted to talk about and the truths I wanted to explore, and those were the topics that you and I have great reverence for, which are, are we alone, ETs, alien-human relations, abductions, what is out there, and after some experiences of knowing they are definitely here, I wanted to bring that there was a calling pulling me to, because my supervisors are going, what is the topic she's dealing with? This is really confrontational. Alien human relations, audience interactive theatre. This is going to be dangerous. But I could not help myself. I spent a year having to not just develop a thesis and the backing of it. I had to satisfy a committee that wanted to actually, they were worried that I was going to harm people. This is really strange stuff, but it really happened. It was known then by the Macaulay conundrum. That was the name you first met me under, my married name, and it became known as a benchmark in arts research, where my research was was perceived as not being under the arts but under human experimentation, and that's furthest from where I wanted to be perceived at. But unfortunately they saw it was an area that needed to be very closely monitored, because I was looking at the spaces between art, sport and war. They were areas of human interaction for all different reasons: expression, competition and domination and power and all that sort of thing. I'm trying to make what I was doing as simple as to understand as possible. And I found a term called tribophenomenal, which is actually an engineering term, I believe, that is about two very opposed forces coming together and rubbing up against each other, but out of that something comes out. And that's what got them worried. Tribophenomenal theatre, it was called, the actual audience interactive form. Plus, I was dealing with the question of alien-human relations and that sort of thing, and bringing the audience in to play out things, as well as actors working as a form of stimulus.
Well, I was there, and it was very cutting edge. That's for sure. It was.
And I took that through my honours year, right through to my PhD. There were three performance components that ran that entire length of time. And by the end of it, I wasn't even doing this inside a theatre space, a designated theatre space. I was running a real UFO research symposium under the umbrella of the Queensland University of Technology.
So you were following a calling. Let's sort of zoom in a bit to that. Like, what was it like for you when you said, I just went with it. I had to do this. What was that? What was going on there? What can you describe the mechanics of it, or what was happening?
It was like, no, I know I'm a good director, and I can work with Molière, and I can work with Racine, I can work with Shakespeare, I can do all that and play with actors and do all that. But the calling was to do something which was not just for the sake of, doing a PhD, a performances research PhD research. It was more than that for me. It was actually the topic as well that I wanted to question and bring into a public space. I knew it was being done by groups like yourself and what Martin were facilitating in different ways. But for me, it was the calling to bring it to a level that people had to turn around and go, oh God, this might be real. Mm. Because I was sick of the putting abductees into, back then, this is back then, where people were really treated shabbily by the system, by society, as crazies. And I go, no. There is something here. This is something they have experienced. And I am interested because I've had similar experiences, but nowhere to where they've gone to. And so I had some fear around it as well. But the unknown, the truth, was something I was on that. That's what was important for me, was to uncover the truth. It's interesting because I was a journalist in the days when, journalism was like, it's about uncovering the truth.
Yeah.
Changed a lot since then, but I'm not going to go into that. But
so when that call went out to you,
yeah,
and I guess I'm asking this for people who haven't had, they were drawn to various different things, but The universal experience is the call. Something reaches out like an invitation to people to step up, step down, step away, but to be in a different space as what they are at that time, to do something different. What do you think it is that calls out, that it sends out that invitation, that, you know, puts it in the envelope, puts a stamp on it, says, there you go, Deb. You know, like, is it the subject matter that we're drawn to? But is it, I mean, it's a universal experience. I've spoken to a lot of people who have this, and they feel, you know, something has catapulted them, but we don't actually often talk about the process of the catapult. You know, what any ideas on that?
It's connecting. I think being an empath might have something to do with this for me. If an idea is in my body and I'm emotionally and spiritually connecting with it, I listen. Especially when it becomes insistent and repetitively knocking on my door. And I realize that I cannot not answer it. And therefore, I get to a point where it's a leap of faith. It's like a hunger. It's like a hunger. Again, I've had the voices come in my head, and they're not my voices. And they're telling me, you have got to follow what we're actually saying. Go down that road. It's okay. But it's not always okay, or maybe the road got very, very bumpy on that call that I did for my PhD, because it got hairy. It got very hairy, and it was, but to stay with it, and I could not, I remember the head, oh gosh, I don't want to mention any names, of course. I was being really punished while I was on the road. It was not an easy road. And I went through people turning on me, people, you know, the decisions you've made, the choices you've made, you know, really being very, very critical. And everything was falling apart around that time. Marriage, blah, blah, blah. It's just crazy. And the university were looking at me going, what have we done? What have we done? But what I was doing, which someone told me about 2 years later, was I was actually pushing the boundaries. And that is what a doctor of philosophy is all about. I was actually pushing the boundaries of understanding in the topic I was dealing with and in the form I was working in. And they said, my goodness, what you did is now become regular. Well, I hate when they said reality TV, but yeah, it's...
That's interesting, because you mentioned that you just had to do it, you couldn't not do it. And people have said to me, why do you still do what you do? Which is, I mean, as you know, been involved with UFO research heavily for 32 years. And I've tried to walk away from it many times. But I sort of had to come to a realization, I guess, or an acceptance that I can't not do it. There's something inside of me that no matter how far away sometimes I get involved in other things, it's always there. It's a persistent something which I can't even put into words that says, come on, come this way. And I might decide, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. I think I've had enough. And then all of a sudden I will receive a lot of reports from people, or
Yes.
I'll have a flood of people come forward and tell me about their personal encounters. And I think I can't leave these people with no one to talk to. There's hardly anyone around for them to talk to, you know. So something happens in the external world to bring me back into it.
Yes.
To stay in that orb, that energy field of that, whatever it is. And I've looked at all the other different areas of interest that I've developed over the years, particularly in the afterlife. And now I'm finding that people who report close encounters often have can have a near-death experience. Half of them can have a near-death experience. So, you know, it's all come back together again. It's a very strange process. It's a real mystery.
It is a mystery tour, isn't it?
It is a mystery tour.
But you're on the tour.
Yes.
You're on the tour. We're working for the bigger, the larger.
Yeah.
We're working at a micro level, but in fact we're working at a macro level as well.
Yeah.
And I've never been forced, but the insistency to hop on and go down that road, it's come from me as well, because they know that I am interested to know what's on the other side. Pull back the veil. What is there? What are the layers?
Yes. Yeah.
Understanding, and along the way you get an understanding of yourself, and you realize, you know, who you become, but just see how things work and why. It's not just to focus on all the other players, but it is, because there's so much more that we don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you, Sheryl, I have moved through arts, corporate training, marketing, communications, health products, and, you know, working in all those areas. And what am I trying to say here? The questions that always I cannot stop asking is, what's going to happen in the future, or what is happening now, and why? And it is, for me, around what's happening in the cosmos and other species. And I you know, that absolutely, I'm like a moth to the flame on this one. I'm just so intrigued, even after all these years. You know, my father was the person who actually put this into my orbit as a young girl, because I was told of his experiences and my mother's experiences, and for some reason that just lit me up. But then the weirdest thing was that age of about 14, early teenage years, I'd never heard of the word transition before. It just came out of my mouth. And it made me go, well, what is this transition? Looked it up in the dictionary, okay, but that could mean so many different things. And then I realized as I went on, people have come into my life, they're almost like guides. They're like guides, human beings, not ET, but they have, it's like finding feathers on the road and coins, and you go, thank you. Thank you.
That's what I was going to say, because the key is, I mean, some of these, a call can go out like, we can send a call out, right? We can send it out like before people have prayers, or a prayer, or there's chanting or ringing of bells before. In certain traditions, you know, there are things that people do to prepare to send out a call. But when the call comes back, we don't always listen. Like, it's like the radio is not on the right channel, you know. So we can get all these little things that happen. And I know a lot of people had the experience of having a question about something like, my life should be, you know, I should be doing something more meaningful with my life. I don't know what I should be doing. And they're on a real deep search within themselves about where they need to go next, but nothing's very clear to them. And then these little things will appear on the path where they might overhear a conversation, and the words come out of someone else's mouth of an answer to something they've been asking. Or they might turn on the radio and a particular song comes on which is very meaningful for people, and they go, oh, wow, is that a prompt? You know, and then you continue to, once I think you start wondering that question, you recognize more of these prompts.
Yeah.
And they can come also through dreams and symbols and all sorts of different things, you know. In shamanic practices, which I teach, you know, you might see a cockatoo.
Yeah.
And a cockatoo is an animal messenger. It has a meaning for you at the time, or a kookaburra, or you might see a, you know, whatever it is, some sort of animal that runs across your path, and it has meaning to guidance.
I've got a story about that. I've got a story about the bird. Birds came into my life and were messengers prior to me actually having the courage to go, I really need to go to this place called Sweden. First part of the story was, since a very young age, right up until my almost early 30s, I used to have this recurring dream that I was in London where I was born, and I would suddenly fly out of my bed, and I was like a bird. And I flew over this place, and I called it the Hook of Holland, and I didn't know that. Again, transition, Hook of Holland, and I would fly all around Scandinavia. I'd never heard of Scandinavia, and I would fly around it, notice the topography, and then I would fly across and back and forth, and I was looking for something, but I didn't know what I was looking for. Boom. How many years later, I end up going to Scandinavia to live. And I remember going to my very first coastal part and just breaking down in tears when I saw what I had been seeing in these recurring dreams. It was just the rocky shoreline cliffs, not high cliffs, but low cliffs. I went, oh my God, I know this place. And the second one was, prior to actually going to make the decision to go across and live again in Europe, in Sweden, there was a bird on the road that my son noticed as we drove home from cricket one day, and it was going around in circles. It was a pigeon. Mom. I said, okay, get out the car, let's go. I went to the roadway, and I put my hand, I've never done this before, don't ask me how, but I just followed my instinct and I put my hand down. This bird jumped up onto my hand and I picked it up like that, and I noticed it had all this gunk in its eyes. I went, oh my goodness, it must be sick, it's lost its way, disoriented. I'll just put it underneath this hedge across the road, and I'll go in the house, get a box and take it up to the vet. And I went outside about 5 minutes later looking for the bird, couldn't find it, under the hedge, up the road, across the creek, nowhere to be found. Well, I probably assumed the wrong thing. It's quite capable of looking after itself. 2 hours later, I opened the door to my son's father, who had arrived to pick up his son. And as I opened the door, beside my car in the driveway was this bird going like that. what the heck? What the heck? And I walked out and I just put my hand down again. The bird came up and then, boom, it went, I'm as sick as a dog, just like Stefan, which was my partner's name. I went, did you hear? The voice was like so real. I thought everyone had heard it. No, it's like, I don't know whether you've had this experience before, Sheryl, but it just blew my mind. My paradigm shifted like you would not believe. And I went, oh. And I said goodbye, and I put the bird in a box, took it to the vet. They said they'd look after it. Wildlife will look after it probably if, you know, everything's going to be okay with its eyes. I said, thank you very much. Anyway, that afternoon I was very teary. I was very vulnerable. I knew something was, very, very displaced in my body, like I was going to learn something. And I suddenly got this text message from my partner in Oslo. He was in Oslo at the time. And he said, I'm as sick as a dog. And all I could say was, I know, a little birdie told me. He'd been sick for a few days, very bad.
Oh dear, isn't that interesting?
So that's another form of calling.
Yeah, yeah.
I need to be there. Yeah. And I heard the trees. You ask a tree to send messages. After that, I started watching all bird activity. If a bird came into my space, what's the message?
Yeah, and I've spoken to people who actually have communications from the environment too, whether it's a tree or mountains or animals. Yeah, that when they come in close proximity to those things, that or even a plant in a corner that looks sick, they'll go, the message is, move me, put me somewhere healthy, you know, or the tree, you know, often a lot of deep wisdom, those sorts of things. And people, you tell that to the you know, mainstream world, and they think that you're nuts and you should be dragged away and put into some sort of facility.
I know. It's
very different, isn't it? But, you know, when you're getting to the truth of the matter, when you want to get to the truth of reality, I think that those things, you have to face them.
Yes.
Yeah. But I was going to go on to, I've actually been reading a book by an author called Anthony Levoy, I think it is. I hope I pronounced his name right. And he says that when a call goes out, we're called to remember what has been dismembered, to remember our vocation, our purpose in life, to do something, to move towards something, or to move away from something. So, you know, what do you think about the idea that we're called to remember what's been dismembered? And particularly through this pandemic that we're going through right now.
Called to remember what has been dismembered.
Dismembered, yeah.
How do you define dismembered? I love that word.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
Well, where things are pulled apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, for me on a personal level, when the realization that, isn't this terrible? It wasn't about health for me, because I felt healthy, I felt robust. Whatever's coming down the pipe with this COVID, you know, I'm going to be okay. I'm going to weather this. And but I understood and respected that people who were less more vulnerable, and immunity challenged, yeah, we need to look after them. But for me, it was this before it really hit. It was about a week before it hit everyone. I understood it. It was in my body, and I just burst into tears. Where it was going to affect people economically. make people really scared about their security, and everything they had known was going to fall apart. And they had to, and at that point I dismembered. I dismembered. And it took about 2 to 3 days of me, first of all, being alone, because I tend to hide rather than share my grief or my worries, and because I don't want to be a burden on people. But the most beautiful thing is that someone did actually tap me on the shoulder. You need to face this, Debra. Sorry, but that's the way it is. And I know you can do it. And I went through a process of actually allowing everything that's happened, what my situation is, just personally, dismember it, look at parts. What can you do? Forget about what you can't do or get. What can you do? So I was able to, through speaking with a few people, find out where I was, help me find where I was in that process. At the same time, it was asking me to go deep, deep, deep in myself. And that was painful, but it was really necessary. But I realized I had to go deep to pull out finally how I was going to become even better than I was a few days before. I knew that I had to, it was like a rebirth. It was fascinating. And I'm sure a lot of people have been going through something similar. And it was the most liberating thing. Mm. All those holding on to the old programs of the way things are done, that's what I was dealing with. And then I woke up one morning, it was 3 days later, and I was just like, it was a rebirth. It was like the phoenix rising. And I decided I would go out and I would commit not only to myself, but to others out there. I would commit myself. And I can't do anything about their jobs or anything, but I can sure as hell give my heart to my love and actually wish them a happy day. And I did. I must have called out to about 50 people on a walk. I walked for about 2.5 hours, and I was just in joy, absolute joy. And I thought, this is what you need to do. This is where you need to go. This is by serving others here, you're going to be serving yourself. You love human beings. You are a human being. It's time you loved yourself. And this is what I've come out. I've actually honored, actually valued myself like I've never done before. I've always had a problem with self-love. So to get this clarity was extraordinary. I've become closer to my daughters as a result. My girls, I'm already close to my son, but my daughters, I've got twins. And I was just, it's pulled down, you've got perceptions. You put perceptions up in life you see through your lens, and those perceptions aren't necessarily true. So you pull down, you just get rid of all that noise that's going on in your head and old programs. Let those go and just be. And that's the best you can do.
Yeah. And I was going to pick up on that because you've just described an initiation experience, really. Yeah. Because, when people are, I guess, drawn to shamanic practices or that sort of world, the spirits call them. So a call goes out. And whether they answer the call or not is up to them. But I have read stories about people, because the call is to step into your vocation. And I've read stories where that's really important to do that, regardless of how fearful you are or how not in the accepted form it might appear that, you know, to the rest of your family or your community or society in general, that some people have actually come very close to death because they haven't taken up the vocation through serious illness. And so, you know, it's almost like a creative illness can step in, you know, to make sure you go onto a different path. And actually that's what happened to me during the 90s, where I had a chronic illness for 10 years. And the whole process was, for me, I can look back on it now and look at it as an initiation.
Yeah.
But through that, I was dismembered. I had to let go of everything. My own expectations, other people's expectations, society's expectations, who I thought I was, what my markers in life were as to give me personal identity, because the whole point of it is to deconstruct your identity and take you down to the bare bones. And in shamanism, they talk about a shaman is a person who becomes a bare bone. They don't have baggage, they don't have stories, they don't take that with them on a journey or when they're with other people. That's nothing. And so they let all that go, and they go through this dismemberment process, but then they are put back together. And in shamanic practices, we can talk about that symbolically, where sticks can be replaced in the body where the ribs were, and crystals can be placed where various organs were, and all those sorts of things. But then that's just the beginning of the story.
Mm.
That's the beginning, because then they come back to their tribe, but they never fully re-enter the tribe. They live on the periphery of their tribe. Experience always defines them as being slightly different to everybody else. But that's because they also have a role to play. And I guess that's where I'm heading with this roundabout story, is that when we have a calling and we follow that call, then we step into the role that we are about to play for the purpose at that time, whether it's for the rest of your life or whether it's for a certain amount of years or months or whatever it is. But it's about that invitation to step into that role. And I think that's what you've been describing, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I'm just thinking about the things that have happened as a result of this. That's really moving, Sheryl. It's moved me, what you've said. I feel quite... I've always felt like the outsider. Felt like an alien in my own world. And on the edge, on the outside, periphery, playing where I'm told not to play. And right now, for some reason, for all these reasons that have just occurred for me, that I'm okay with that. Right now, for the first time, I'm actually okay with that. It's who I am, and it's my purpose here. That's becoming more clearer. There's still a way to go. But what's happened this week, I was trying to edit a video together. And I do enjoy the process, but I was doing it for everyone involved in a team that I'm part of. And it was just a bit of fun, but I put too much time into it, and it was like me going back to the old ways, right? Because it wasn't that important, but for me to complete it and pull out a great product, for me that was very important. That's Debra from the old days. And the computer, the program, it won't let me actually take the finished product and transfer it anywhere. I don't know what to do with it. Is that a sign? Is that a sign?
I know what you mean.
It's like, no, we don't want you to keep on doing this. You're the old pleasing Debra. Please her so she will like me and let me in, make me feel like one of the insiders, not the outsiders. Because that stuff goes on. Even though I know these people do love me, but I that performance, Debra, this is the way I want you to see me.
Yeah, I think everyone in society, we're very much like that, aren't we? Focused on how we present to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was
acceptable.
Thank you. Whenever I go for a trip up, I don't know about you, I go, okay, what have I done? What am I thinking? Is it what I'm thinking at the moment? I really should just adjust. Yeah, you're right. I know the answer to all those old thoughts of like judgment and it's your fault, not mine, all that. You trip up and it's to me that's intervention. That's it's a very it's a divine intervention. And it's okay, and I accept it, and I actually sometimes break down in laughter at myself and with them. Thank you. But out of all this, me putting myself forward and going, because it's been very, very confronting in the last few years to actually do a Facebook Live and actually face people for the first time in my little page that I've got, which I love. This is not my personal account. It's the page that I have on Facebook. And I did it. And I cannot believe that it's pulled you back into me. And, I've actually attracted where I feel at home with who I am. Thank you. Thank you for answering my call. Because I was calling you. I just want to have endless conversations and experiences with you, Sheryl. You've got so much to offer. I'm just like so grateful.
Oh, thank you, Debra. That's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah, well, I've been doing most of it vicariously online. As I said, I was a moderator for an online forum which looks into all alternative stuff and conspiracy theory and abductees, place where scientists and intelligence people go, and but to have someone on the ground that I can reach out to, that is a gift. I know there's it's just that I've been living through a computer for so long. That wasn't me. Who is this? I mean, I know this is a tool. It's great. It's a wonderful connective device, but yeah, I'm sure it'd be a lot deeper if we were face to face as well.
Oh yes, and we'd probably take hours and hours, which we can't afford because people's attention spans just aren't that long, and there's so much information just pouring out onto the internet now, isn't there? It's just overwhelmed. People send me 2-hour and 3-hour videos to watch. I can't watch those.
No.
I wish I had a phone.
So sorry, guys. Sorry, I don't mean to go on too long here.
Let's wind this up, Deb. Let's with everything that you've experienced when you've answered calls, the invitation's gone out and you've answered the call and it's been tough and at times it's been fearful, you've been challenged and all those sorts of things. Is it worth it?
Hell yeah. I wouldn't be here today. It has been worth it. Don't regret any of it. No, it's shaped me. It's made me who it's been gifts. And that's I'm just grateful for every energy, every entity, human, animal, insect, plant. Yep. You've been my teachers.
I'm sure they appreciate that you're saying that. And it's true, isn't it? Yeah. And I think it's really important too that as we get older, because I'm slightly older than you.
No.
Yes, is that we step up into our eldership and give this advice with some wisdom attached to it, hopefully, to younger generations about to be bold, to be fearless, to be who you are in every single way that you can. Because that's the sort of future that we want to live in, isn't it? As we become older, we want a generation below us who are like that, supporting us.
Yeah. I absolutely, that communicating between the generations, the languaging, sometimes, you feel, wow, oh my goodness, what have I missed here? But at the end of it, I still take these souls that are coming through as who they are individually. And I just, if they've got a good heart, and I can see that heart, I can see heart in even the most rotten types, honestly. There's something about them. For me, I go, do you know that this is what I see in you? I don't know whether you see it in yourself, but I love it. And I do that with a lot of people because my heart is just expands when I think about people, young people, but also all ages. We're all on a journey.
Yeah, we certainly are. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, you're building a health, wellness and beauty business, partnering with an ethical, heart-centered, innovative and sustainable company, which fits cultural creative right down to a T. And through that, and I've been in businesses like this too, where it's not just about the business that you're in and the products that you use, but it's always about personal growth and development, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I've learned so much. These are things that I've had on my back burner that I need to address, and I didn't realize it was going to be a personal development experience as well. Absolutely. I wanted to learn more about how to work in a very different model of business, but I didn't see how I would be growing through this as a person as well, and finding a tribe of people that I do love dearly. And it is a company. It's the culture of the company that you don't last long with a particular company if you do not share the values, and the vision, and that's why I am still doing this. Yes, I love their products, but it's more than that. It is their vision for the future, and they're doing amazing things. I cannot, it blows my mind. Science and using natural ingredients, using plant-based ingredients, and also paying forward just the corporate and social responsibility. This is a company that's really walking the talk, and I've seen so many examples of it. They go to places that big pharmaceutical companies won't go because there's not enough people on the planet who have a particular disease. I mean, they are actually putting the profits into so many beautiful missions in science and medical research, and as well as their own product development and environmental causes as well. So I feel like, this is good. This is something I like belonging to.
I think this is the sort of thing that we're going to see change in the pandemic. We're going to see people looking for work. And let's face it, there's going to be a lot of unemployment, and people are going to be looking for ways to earn a living, even after this 6 months, with the JobKeeper, Job Seeker payments, etc., because the government can't keep doing that forever. So people are going to be looking for ethical based companies that are environmentally friendly and eco-centered and all those sorts of things. I think this is the shift that we're going to see going through all this. And people will look at aligning their values, their personal values, with what they do with their time and how they earn money.
Yeah.
And I think these companies like what you're in, and I'm involved with one too, and many other companies around like that are ethically based and using sustainable products and resources, they're the way of the future.
And they're also teaching us we're not just an employee. We're not an employee. In fact, we're partnering with them, and it's actually bringing people to a place like myself, emerging as self-sufficient.
Yes.
Yep. There is a, and it's done ethically. That's the most important part. For me, you know, I don't like screwing anyone. I hate when people get screwed. I think it's so, that's an old thing. You know, that competition thing and all that. No, this has gravitas. It has deep meaning. It has family values, I suppose, as well. And it's making people more resilient and more independent rather than sucking off the teat and expecting others to look after them. And I always wanted to have that independence, and it's not an easy road. It's not an easy road, but by golly, I'm on that journey, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
That's great.
Getting to meet so many new people as well. I mean, it's just insane.
So how do people find you?
Okay. Well, they can connect with me on Facebook, I suppose. I'm happy for people to reach out and come onto my page, Age Less, Live More. Yeah, I'm happy for you to share my contact details with people you feel, you know, my email address and my mobile number, Sheryl. I'm happy for that to be shared with people that you think, would like to know more about me and what I'm doing and where I may be able to help them.
Yeah, and I like the Age Less. Was it Age Less, Live More?
Yes.
I like that. That's great. I love it. I want that. I want to live for 200 years as an age of 15. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, listen, you're looking pretty good. You're looking amazing.
Oh, thank you very much.
You actually look better than you did 20-something years ago.
Well, 20-something years ago, I was very ill.
You were, but I didn't realise how ill you were.
Mm.
No, you are. It's good to see you like this.
Well, it's been a real pleasure for me, Deb. Just enjoyed this, and as I said to you before we started this conversation, that we're just scratching the surface of the topic of following the call. It's such a huge conversation.
Yeah.
It goes very deep as well, broad and deep. So we'll probably continue this conversation down the track.
I'm so happy that I've had this. This is such a new thing for me. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Deb. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.